You've worked so hard on the problems today. Now we're going to go over and check our answers. So let's start with problem number 1. It says Janet runs 1/4 of a half-mile relay race. What fraction of a mile does Janet run? So when I'm looking at that, I see that the race that Janet's running isn't going to be a whole mile. So this square is supposed to represent a whole mile. And she's only done half of a mile during her race. So I'm going to represent that by cutting this square, which represents a mile, in half to be a half a mile. And then I'm going to move over this piece to shade 1/2 of it. So I've represented the distance of the race. Now, Janet, she's in a relay race. And if you're not familiar, the way a relay race works is someone runs, and then there's usually like a baton, like a stick, and a person runs, and then they pass it to the next person who runs, and then they pass the baton to the next person. So Janet's not going to run the whole race. She's only going to run 1/4 of it. So I'm going to take this, and remember I've told you in a couple other videos, I like to cut force in half, and then cut those halves in half to represent a fourth. So if you can kind of see it this way, if you think about this, one person would run this piece, one person would run this piece, one person this piece, one person this piece. So what I'm going to do, it's hearts this time, is I am going to fill in 1/4. So 1/4 would be this piece all the way across. Okay? But I'm really going to be looking at, well, what piece. So Janet did 1/4 of a half. So we can see that if I'm looking for my numerator, it's going to be the part that has a heart and is purple. There's only one piece like that. And it's one piece out of how many? And so I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pieces. And so the answer to this would be 1/8. So it'd be 1/4 times 1/2. So we're taking 1/4 of a half, and that would be 1/8. Problem 2. Talisha owns 4/5 of a section of land. So remember I said for 4/5 of a section of land, then I'm going to break it apart like this, and I'm going to do one fraction all the same distance. So don't do crosses of different things, just break it one. Remember, kind of like, I always thought it was confusing when I first learned about this. I want to make fifths, but I don't do 5 lines. I only do 4 lines because the 4 lines break it up into 5 pieces. And she owns 4/5 of it. So let's see if I can get this duplicated. There we go. So I'm going to duplicate this purple, but I'm going to make it really skinny here. And for me as a perfectionist, sometimes I can get a little bit like, oh, that doesn't look exactly perfect. So remember, we're not looking for perfection here. Okay. We do want it to be nice and neat. But I don't want anyone feeling super stressed out about it. I could see me kind of feeling that way. Feeling like, oh, that doesn't really look the way it's supposed to. We're filling this in the best way we can. So there is 4/5. That's how much land she owns. And she wants to put green beans on 3/4 of her land. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it into 4ths. Yep, anytime that things go behind, I know that happened with some people the other day on one of the assessments. If it does that, then just you can click and you can send it to the front. a lot of you problem solved that yourself. I was like, get it, 5th grade. I love it when 5th graders problem solve stuff because you guys are so smart and capable. All right, and last one, let's duplicate this. And oops, I meant to send it to the front. Boop. There we go. So now I have taken those fifths and cut them up. And she's actually going to plant stuff on 3/4 of her land. So I'll do some little triangles. They kind of look like beans. And so there's one. I'm going to do this. Yeah, you just get to sit here and watch me. Check me out. I am planting green beans right now, y'all. Just call me Farmer Sarah. Okay, so there is 1/4. Here is 2/4. And just remember, we are really paying attention to the part that is purple and green. Let me go back to my fraction. I'm not done planting. Talisha must love her some green beans. I'm telling you what. Put that there. Now, sometimes students will say, well, why are we putting triangles here? Because she doesn't own that piece of land. And I totally hear you. You could not put green beans, like the little triangles there. For me, it just helps me to know that I stripe it all the way across. So if that's something you've been wondering, yes, technically I can see that, but this is kind of helping you see that here's a 4th, here's a 4th, here's a 4th. Okay, so when I look at this, I see that on 3/4 of her land, let me move this down here, on 3/4 of her land, oh, sorry, she plants 3/4 of her land with green beans. So 3/4 of her land, what's her land? 4/5. And then I can see in my picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 out of 20. And remember, you can kind of check that and say, well, 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 5 is 20. Make sure you're going back and checking. Once students learn the rule for multiplying fractions, they're like, oh, I love multiplying fractions. It's so easy because you can just go across and multiply. We can see that 12/20ths, two even numbers, so it can be simplified. Some of you will just say, oh, I'm going to take it down to 6/10, and then take that to 3/5, and then 3/5 would be our final answer. Or you could see that 4 goes in 12 and 20. So either way. So 3/5 is the final answer for that. And 1